Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
We have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty.
Now you get RFK Jr.
Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again?
You get Tulsi Gabbard.
Putting our country in a continual state of war.
You get Elon Musk and you get J.D. Vance.
It's a hell of a way to start the next 4 years.
The right-wing Avengers.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength.
Shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one.
The rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
The golden age of America has most definitely begun.
Begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
They're getting the dirtbags off these streets.
There's one guy who can fix this shit, and it's Donald Trump.
What's storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
America is a land of heroes, a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers. Our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans, we are pioneers, we are the pathfinders. We settled the new world, we built the modern world, and we change history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young, the sun is still rising, God's grace is still shining, and my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're in the world. My name is Josh, and welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Friday. And we had to wait 5 years for it, but now it's coming. The best is coming. Now it's coming. Man, you're going to love it. We had our annual camping trip this last weekend in Eureka, California. That's why I was not with you Thursday or Friday. And met a lot of awesome people. I don't remember all the screen nukes. I know Mega Nuke was there. Mega Nuke. Good dude right there. But we had a great time, sung some karaoke. Nope, none of those videos are going to be posted. That's why I said that Mega Nuke's my new best friend because, yeah, he's got some dirt on me singing karaoke. But we had a blast out there at the Forest property in Eureka, Missouri. Hopefully next year more people can show up and we can have a blast. And we had about 20, 25 people or something like that, and it was a great time. Except for the heat. The heat was a little crazy. It was about 105 degrees, and yeah, it sucked. Let's just say that. It sucked. But tonight's show is the New World Orders. New World Orders. Not New World Order, New World Orders. Because we have two competing systems that are trying to come in and make things happen. You know, I find it really interesting to watch all the events unravel in the world and then kind of go back and look at what we've talked about over the course of the last 5-6 years and kind of like take it all in and go, holy shit, we've come a long way, people. And what we are witnessing now is truly remarkable on so many fronts, right? We're seeing the systematic destruction of the old guard. We're watching this new guard rise up, but along with it, a whole new idea on how countries should interact and trade with each other. A whole grand perspective of a financial system that is beneficial to you, me, and everybody. We're going to talk about a lot of that, but we're also going to talk about what is also unraveling. So if we go back to the early in the year of what I was talking about, I talked about 3 phases of a plan. What's interesting, Anna Paula Luma came out and says, no, starts phase 3. I don't think we're in phase 3. Maybe they expanded the project to like 4 or 5 phases, but I always thought it was 3 phases. First phase was follow the money and remove deep state infiltration. That was the first 30 days of Donald Trump's administration this year. And that was what Doge came in, shut down USAID, shut down a whole bunch of rogue agencies operating in our government, started getting rid of citizens on paper only and getting rid of employees on paper only. And then on the other side of the house is we saw lots of people getting fired all throughout various parts of our government. That was phase 1. Phase 2, as we pointed out to you, was investigations leading into prosecutions, because you follow the money, that leads to prosecutions, investigation. So right now we're seeing phase 2 implementation. The investigations are beginning, but also laying the foundation for what I would consider to be phase 3, which is the best is yet to come. This is Make America Great Again. This is what we're leading into. This is what we have. Fix the flag behind me. No, it's my camera. My camera's just a little crooked. So I apologize. If it's too crazy for you, I apologize. I took my laptop with me this weekend. So when I put the camera back on, it's just a little janky, and I don't want to mess it up too much. Hopefully that's better. But Kip's like, Josh, fix the flag behind you. Josh, fix the flag behind you. I'm sorry. I will do it later. I was rushing to get everything done. I've been nonstop working since I got home last night into today. Just busy, busy, busy. There's some things going on in the world that I can't even discuss with you. Some other people know what I'm talking about. It's some scary shit. Don't know how I got involved in it, but I'm all involved in it. And I'll kind of hint on it tonight. I kind of dance around the issue if I can. But we're going to get into that part, the firestorm scenario, because when we get into the investigations and eventually prosecutions and arrests, guys, we have to understand there's 2 competing new world orders. The one system has not completely lost control. They have power. They are making moves. There are still things happening. And I think that's where I differ with a lot of other people in the social circuits, is that they see that this is all over and that it's already been done. And we're watching one big show. And I agree with that to a point. I agree with that in the context that we know what's going to happen next. We see their moves before they can make them. And we already have the counter moves in place to where when they make those moves, boom, it's done. We saw this a lot with the No Kings protest with Trump, right? They were going to plan social unrest. They were going to utilize the shootings in Minnesota of the congressman and the senator in the state houses that were shot and killed. They're going to use that as fuel to ignite the No Kings protest. But Donald Trump stopped that dead in his tracks. 20,000 troops at the southern border, instantly deployable anywhere in the country within just a few hours. National Guard deployed to California. The governor tried to stop it, couldn't stop it. So we have to understand that there's moves and counter moves. But there's more to this of what they're going to do because they have to produce absolute chaos. Now, is Trump giving us signs that there's more going on than what's actually going on? And I think he is. You know, Trump is in the United Kingdom right now. Now, Keir Starmer, instead of Trump going to London and visiting 10 Downing Street, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, went to Trump in Scotland and visited Trump's house in Scotland. This tells me a few different things. Number one, Trump won't go into London. He even said it today. I'm not going into London. I don't like their mayor. So he won't visit the capital of the old guard. Why? Because it's an old guard protected area. He's staying at his own residences in places that he goes. In the context that there's a threat against his life, and I believe there is an active threat against his life. Starmer instead visits Trump's residence in Scotland. Well, have you ever read The Art of the Deal? In The Art of the Deal, Trump talks about the art of tactical location. Trump preferred to host meetings at his own office or property using the psychological advantage of home turf. He knew that controlling the environment, including the location of the meeting, tilted negotiations in his favor. That's Trump telling us a lot with just being in the UK, being in Scotland, and Keir Starmer going up there to visit him. So John Bashman today reported 2 U.S. intelligence sources have told him that CIA Director John Radcliffe is set to declassify one particular intelligence annex that shows then FBI Director James Comey knowingly framed Trump with intel he knew was false. He pushed the false narrative to stop Trump. Now, what was this document? Well, this is the declassified annex or the classified annex of the Durham report. You got to remember the Durham report happened years ago. Nothing came out of it, no prosecutions. But here's the key. As we said back then, the Durham report wasn't for then, it was for now. It's for what's going on right now. What are we seeing here? Declassified Susan Rice email confirms Michael Flynn was personally targeted in the Oval Office meetings. They singled him out. They knew that he was that one point that they could press within the incoming Trump administration to produce a massive chaos, and that they did. And I believe the Trump administration knew this. Now, Emerald Robinson posted this, and this is actually, it's very, very long, but I'm going to read it for you because it outlines everything leading into 2024 election where they tried to steal it. Now, you got to remember, I had Patrick Byrne on, me and Alpha. We interviewed Patrick Byrne, and Patrick Byrne told us, he said, we stopped the 2024 steal. And he told us right before that how he stopped the steal in another Venezuelan election. Remember, Maduro actually lost, but then he seized power. And so Emerald is hinting here that they tried to steal the 2024 election too, but it was stopped. Listen to this. She says, it's time to explain what happened on election day 2024 to stop the steal. This very long thread involves quite a few people over 4 years and dozens of sources. We must begin just after the rigged 2020 election. She says, let's begin the story in December 2020. President Trump wanted the election fraud investigated. He told his team to hire someone to discover the truth about the voting machines. Multiple sources tell me an ex-CIA investigator was hired for this job. That investigator reported that claims election fraud were overblown. Some DOJ lawyers also wanted election fraud investigated. Those efforts were blocked by Attorney General Bill Barr's staff, including Barr's Chief of Staff, Will Levi. Levi threatened to quit if any cases were launched. Also in December of 2020, a group of national security analysts briefed the White House that enough evidence of election fraud existed to launch a full-scale U.S. government investigation. In January of 2021, several GOP senators were briefed as well. Neither the White House nor the senators authorized the investigation. A few people tried to alert President Trump of the National Security Analyst briefing and the need for full investigation in late 2020, but those efforts were blocked by White House counsel Pat Cipollone. According to two different sources, Cipollone joined Bill Barr's law firm on January 17th, 2024. Chris Krebs, the head of a small agency called CISA, which is inside the DHS, sent out a press release in late 2020 claiming the 2020 election was the most secure in American history. Krebs was not a cybersecurity expert. Who hired him? The head of the Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf. Krebs was hired because he was Chad Wolf's close friend. He worked at CISA coordinating with left-wing organizations like Democracy Works to prepare for the 2020 election. Trump fired Krebs a week after he dismissed Defense Secretary Mark Esper. Trump removed Esper, if you remember. Chris Miller and Ezra Cohen were rushed into the Pentagon on November 11th because Esper stopped responding to the White House, which many people believed was a soft coup that was occurring. On November 18th, that's when Miller put all special forces under his direct command. Now, Emerald goes on to say, and hold on, I just lost it. Okay. Emerald goes on to say that when she was disposed by Dominion lawyers in November or in 2024, she was asked specifically about this tweet from November 10th, 2020, because it was the first mention of social media, the link between Smartmatic and Dominion, and that's important. And she posted this on November 10th, 2020, that all crooked roads leads to Dominion voting systems, and it comes back connecting it to Venezuela and Smartmatic. Now, on November 11th, 2020, she noted on Twitter that Mark Malloch Brown, the best friend of global villain George Soros, was listed on the board of directors of Smartmatic. By November 12, 2020, any mention of Mark Malloch Brown and his leading role with Smartmatic had been wiped from the company's website. On November 19th, 2020, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell held a press conference at RNC headquarters. Powell claimed that Dominion brand machines were using Smartmatic software. She also claimed Smartmatic's software was developed in Venezuela for dictator Hugo Chavez. By mid-November 2020, public network scans of Dominion made by military intel analysts were available through legal filings in Michigan. What these documents revealed about America's election system was damning. On December 18th, Trump met with Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, and Patrick Byrne at the White House. They urged Trump to launch an investigation on the voting machine. White House staffers Pat Cipollone and Eric Hirschman and Derek Lyons all argued against doing it. Now, by the way, going back to the military analysts looking at the networks, it was Exhibit 105 in the Michigan filing, is a declaration of military intel analysts from the 305th who mapped the networks of Dominion voting system in Edison Research. We reported on that when this was happening. That came in, and these were introduced into court files, as you can see here. Declaration, it shows that these Dominion systems were directly connected to the internet and exterior. I didn't even put it up, did I? Sorry. Sometimes I get so ahead of myself. There it is. The same public scan also showed a direct connection to the group in Belgrade as highlighted below. So, going into this, we had the evidence as late as 2020. So now, Trump meets with Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, and Patrick Byrne at the White House. They urge the investigation. White House staffers basically said not going to happen. This is the same meeting that Trump said, okay, they were going to appoint Sidney Powell. She was waiting on her security clearance, and the next day they were locked out of the White House. So when we had the rumors that there was a soft coup in the White House in December of 2020, that Trump was basically no longer getting security briefings, that Trump was basically being controlled by the various White House general counsel, this was true. That they had basically shut him out and were threatening to remove him with the 25th Amendment. Okay. December 18th was also the due date for DNI Radcliffe to submit a report to President Trump on foreign interference in the 2020 election. Radcliffe missed the deadline. Radcliffe did not release the report until January 7th, 2021. Note the date of release. His report stated CIA management suppressed intel that China interfered in the 2020 election. That's right, the CIA was hiding China's role in the 2020 elections. That's treason. Radcliffe confirmed that China interfered in the 2020 election and that CIA had tried to hide the fact, but this info arrived too late for President Trump. On January 6, 2021, 100 House Republicans and 12 GOP senators wanted to eject the election results in Congress through motion. Only an emergency can override and halt that day's session. When an emergency happens, special rules apply in Congress. Less than 10 minutes before, two reps called a vote for motions to suspend the election certification, Capitol Police claimed a protest outside would breach the chambers. Key leaders were escorted out. Speaker Pelosi then halted Congress using emergency rules. January 6th was staged. Tier 1 operators and FBI agents present that day in the crowd exercising their First Amendment rights saw a red Starlight shell fired over the Capitol just before the fake insurrection began. That shell is used to signal the start of the battle. After January 6th, the FBI WFO emailed all employees that if they were on the mall, they were required to give a statement. Some agents who didn't volunteer were identified by others. They were required to give statements against their will. Those FD 302s are still classified. The DOJ's OIG later found the FBI had at least 26 confidential human sources who were present at the Capitol on January 6th. None of the CHSs were ever prosecuted. On January 7th, 2021, President Trump was banned from Twitter. On January 8th, Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, and Patrick Byrne were banned from Twitter, along with every one of us that remembers the Great Purge. The coup was complete. The era of government censorship began. On January 8th, 2021, Dominion filed a defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell for $1.3 billion. On January 25th, Dominion filed a similar lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani. Suits against Fox, OAN, Newsmax, and others soon followed. Dominion lawyers sued Godfrey, LLP. On February 4th, Smartmatic filed a defamation lawsuit against Fox News for $2.7 billion. On November 3rd, Smartmatic filed a similar lawsuit against Newsmax and OAN. Emerald Robinson was named a witness in both Dominion and Smartmatic cases against Newsmax. And then, so now I got to find the rest of the thread because she skipped it. Hold on. And there's 76. Now we got to go to 26. All right. In Discovery, Dominion and Smartmatic were allowed to search personal phones and private emails of the TV host, producers, and journalists, not just emails, but text messages. This had never been allowed before in the history of American journalism. Courts ignored all personal press freedoms. Trump was impeached for a second time on January 13th, 2021, 1 week before his term expired. The House adopted one article against him, incitement of an insurrection. The Senate trial began on February 9th. The final vote was 10 votes short of the two-thirds majority required to convict. No GOP senator stated publicly at the time that January 6th was fabricated by the national security state to halt lawful investigations of election fraud. Instead, they went along with the coup. And we remember this. They all just acquiesced. Most of them voted to confirm all of Biden's cabinet picks in 2021. The illegal Biden regime started on January 20th, 2021. As one of the first acts, its regimes allowed China to access the U.S. power grid. This is going to become important later when I start talking about other things. This has made it clear Joe Biden was owned and operated by the CCP. Dominion hired Claire Locke LLP to send letters to 150 people demanding they cease and desist from taking part in defaming Dominion and to preserve all documents. The voting machine companies were trying to make discussions of election fraud illegal and actionable. On February 5th, Fox News pulled Lou Dobbs off the air. He was the highest rated host on Fox Business. The day before, Dobbs and Fox were named in a $2.7 billion lawsuit filed by Smartmatic. Any public figure who discussed election fraud was now a target to be fired. That same day, Time magazine reporter Molly Ball published a cover story touting the inside story of conspiracy, which confirmed the 2020 election had been fortified by American elites to install Biden. The story had the opposite effect of what the author wished. By February 2021, Rasmussen found 61% of GOP voters agreed Biden did not win the election fairly. Voters were turning against GOP officials who called the election secure. House Republicans held their first vote to oust Liz Cheney as a leader. She was gone by May. The illegal Biden regime knew its public support was already shaky in February 2021. So that month, the National Archives and Records Administration, NARA, contacted Trump to return some documents to them. This setup would lead the FBI's Mar-a-Lago raid in 2022. On May 19th, 2021, the House voted for a committee on the January 6th attack with 35 Republicans voting for it. Pelosi then made it a select committee with only 2 GOP members, Cheney and Kissinger. A former CIA Inspector General, David Buckley, served as its staff director. By June, the Biden regime tried the ultimate power grab by putting all state elections under the control of the federal government with the Freedom to Vote bill. When the bill was blocked by the GOP, Dems pressured Manchin and Sinema to end the Senate's filibuster rules. In September 2021, the January 6th committee worked to change the 1887 Electoral Count Act. This was done to answer the Dr. Eastman memo, which was a legal plan for how VP Pence could have certified the 2020 election in Trump's favor. Congress passed the Reform Act in 2022. On November 12, 2021, Steve Bannon was indicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress after he refused to comply with the January 6th committee's subpoenas. The committee's recommended contempt charges against Mark Meadows on December 13th. By December 13th, the January 6th committee had already obtained and leaked the text messages of the Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to left-wing media outlets. The illegally leaked text messages included messages from Fox News host Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity and Brian Kilmeade. By the fall of 2021, the Biden regime was widely hated by the American people. A NASCAR race crowd chanted, "Fuck Joe Biden," on live TV, and in October, the same chant spread quickly to sports events at every venue in America. The Biden regime answer was to increase tyranny. Lawfare in our courts was used to destroy critics. News outlets were forced into major settlements to stop covering election fraud. People were silenced on social media by the CIA and FBI agents giving orders through proxy. This is just the tip of the iceberg, people. Only a small group of people had paid close attention to the voting machine companies, Smartmatic and Dominion, before the 2020 elections. Only they knew that certain companies were actually international criminal organizations. In fact, there was a new segment by Lou Dobbs in 2006 that you should watch. Let's play it right here. I forgot how to share a video.
A firm owned by Venezuela could be allowed to take over one of this country's top voting machine firms. Venezuela, of course, led by Hugo Chavez, working to change the views of most South American countries, moved to the left. Critics of the deal say our nation's very democracy is now for sale without anyone doing a thing about it. Kitty Pilgrim reports.
The use of some 19,000 electronic voting machines in the city of Chicago and Cook County primary on March 21st of this year is now under intense scrutiny. The U.S. company that makes the machines, Sequoia, was bought in 2005 by Smartmatic, a private company primarily owned by Venezuelan businessmen. When Chicago had problems with the machines, a dozen Venezuelan employees were there to help with the election. Chicago officials are outraged.
I think that American elections ought to be run by American companies and ought to be run by American citizens, not Venezuelan nationals.
Smartmatic is...
They knew about this as soon as those Smartmatic contracts were put in place. On August 8, 2024, a federal grand jury in Florida indicted top Smartmatic executives for bribery and money laundering related to the 2016 elections in the Philippines. Roger Alejandro Penate, Jorge Miguel Vasquez, and Eli Morano. Election officials in the Philippines also wanted Smartmatic investigated for changing the script in the transparency server without informing the Commission of Elections, since that change put into question the results of their May 9, 2016 election. Sound familiar? Which bogus NGO was chosen to observe those 2016 elections? It was the Carter Center, headed by former President Jimmy Carter. It also observed the 2006 election in Venezuela. Carter himself later claimed that Venezuela had the best electoral system in the world. In March 2005, Smartmatic acquired Sequoia Voting Systems, which gave it great control over U.S. elections. Smartmatic's new machines were used in the Chicago primaries in March 2006. The vote was halted in key races due to their problems with the new machines. Now, this is also important to understand. That Chicago primary in 2006, who was on those ballots? Just say. Pritzker, governor. After the issues in Chicago, an investigation of Smartmatic began on October 2006 by the Committee of Foreign Investment in the United States. Representative Carol Maloney, Democrat, New York, asked the Bush administration to review the Sequoia deal. Why? Smartmatic's ownership was hidden in foreign trusts. Smartmatic did not divulge its owners to Congress. It sold Sequoia to a small company in Canada called Dominion in December 2006. That ended the probe by the CFIUS. But Dominion and Smartmatic were always linked. In 2008, both companies worked together to automate elections in the Philippines. Smartmatic once sued Dominion in Delaware for breaching a licensing agreement between them, so they were in bed together from the very beginning. Now let me go to the next one. She has these all kind of over the place, but that's okay. I'm looking for 51. And 1 second, we're almost there. 50. All right. Smartmatic's Venezuelan senior developer, David Moreno, who moved over to work at Sequoia in 2006, then became director of election production and testing at Dominion. That's how Smartmatic, Sequoia, Dominion got into U.S. elections in 370 counties in 16 states. In fact, Lemzy Salazar, ex-special ops and security for communist dictator Hugo Chavez, already provided an affidavit with the details of the Smartmatic Dominion connection in November of 2020. 4 years after Salazar's affidavit, David, a highly decorated CIA agent, gave similar testimony about election fraud scheme just before the 2024 election. This is Gary Bernstein. And so Gary is a whistleblower with deep connections to DOJ, FBI, and DEA, and Homeland Security, and he exposes shocking details about foreign involvement in U.S. election. Allegations suggest that foreign regimes, including Venezuela and China, are controlling key election systems. We'll throw that on our X profile for you guys to also see there. So a narco-terrorist state was actually in charge of U.S. elections since 2006. The goal, to place communists in the power and destroy America from within. But there was a small group of people who stopped this nightmare, probably less than 30. They saved the world. The first big mistake for Smartmatic was Juan Andres Bautista got a divorce. He was chief of elections in the Philippines. In 2007, his wife disclosed docs which showed he was worth $1 billion. The DOJ launched an investigation. Bautista was impeached. He fled to the U.S. He refused to return to the Philippines amid a Senate probe. His wife entered the DOJ's witness protection program. Money laundering and conspiracy charges against Bautista were filed on September 19, 2023. Bautista's allegedly received bribe money from executives at Smartmatic for assistance in their bid to secure multi-million-dollar election contracts. But Smartmatic was not named in U.S. court records in 2023. Philippines officials wanted to know who helped Bautista. In 2024, U.S. authorities dismissed reports that Bautista had been arrested after money laundering and conspiracy charges were filed in August. Bautista is not in U.S. custody, and we decline to comment further, said Nicole Navas-Oxman of Biden's DOJ. What was going on? According to Emerald Robinson's sources, Bautista disappeared because the CIA is hiding him. Why? Because USAID gave money to Comelec to hire Smartmatic for the 2016 elections in the Philippines. Bautista can't testify in U.S. court that the U.S. government provided the money. After all, the CIA doesn't want the American people to know that the USAID is actually funding Smartmatic. That would be crazy, right? That would be crazy. U.S. governments invest $500,000 to pilot new voting technologies in 2024 Bosnia-Herzegovina municipal elections. I mean, that would be crazy. See, the CIA wouldn't still use USAID to fund Smartmatic even after the DOJ itself charged 15 of the Venezuelan's top communist officials with running a narco-terrorist conspiracy in 2020. Juan Andres Bautista's divorce was not the only problem for Smartmatic. A group of former intelligence community analysts had produced documents on the 2020 election fraud that provided sufficient legal predicate to use NSA unprocessed raw signal data to prove fraud by December 2020. In December 2020, the National Security Council's Director of Strategic Planning, Richard Higgins, gave a briefing on the document and the complete data set to the White House and President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. On January 4th, 2021, U.S. senators and staffers were also briefed on the document. Among the U.S. senators who were briefed were Senator Kevin Cramer, Republican, North Dakota, and Ron Johnson, Wisconsin. Several National Security Council officials also got the documents. Neither Cramer nor Johnson nor Trump's national security officials tried to authorize the investigation outlined in the documents. Had anyone called the phone number on the memo, they would have reached a senior legal counsel in the heart of the Pentagon. That one phone call would have launched an investigation using unlimited resources of the U.S. government. We're talking about the National Security Administration's, NSA's, raw signal data, which captures every kind of electronic comms on Earth. What people spent the last 4 years uncovering would have been uncovered in a few hours and then sent to Trump, but the call never came. The evidence of the 2020 election fraud is literally sitting in a DOD skiff right now. Military is the only way. And the same DOD legal counsel that was waiting for the signal phone call from Trump to start the investigation in 2020 is still waiting for that phone call in 2025 right now, today. Let's assess the situation as it stood between 2021 to 2022. Sidney Powell was being sued in silence. Rudy Giuliani was being sued in silence. Mike Lindell was being sued in silence. Patrick Byrne was being sued in silence. And Fox Newsmax OEM were being sued and silenced. That's when more patriots showed up to fight. In April 2021, County Clerk of Mesa County, Colorado was told to install a software update that would overwrite the rigged 2020 general election records, which violates federal law. Her name, Tina Peters. Excuse me. And this is really important because Patrick Byrne told this story. So Tina Peters arranged for a consultant to make a forensic image of the server before and after the software update. By August 2021, the password and data associated with Mesa County's 2020 elections were leaked to the public. Colorado uses Dominion voting machines. Experts who reviewed the forensic images found that Mesa County systems did not meet Colorado certification requirements. Why? The system failed to generate and preserve audit trail files. In fact, its audit features were disabled. Mesa systems also had uncertified software installed, which is illegal. It also allows the automated destruction of election records. It allows unauthorized changes to vote totals since it contains 36 wireless networking devices built into the voting systems by a vendor. Two experts found a new and unauthorized shadow databases were secretly created on the machine after the vote counting began. Thousands of ballots that had already been counted were then secretly reprocessed inside the voting machine, undetected by election officials because it happened in the random access memory, which would spool up an iteration of a computing instance, and then it would recalculate them and then re-upload it as if it was actual legitimate election data. The system was also preset to erase critical records within a few days, including activity logs and user logins, which covered the tracks of anyone committing unauthorized access, software installations, or manipulation. The report was made public September 2021. Dominion and Colorado Secretary of State destroyed all data on the hard drive in Mason County's machines 1 month after the April 2021 election, even though federal and state laws required election records to be preserved for at least 22 months. Nobody went to jail except for Tina Peters. Let me pick up this thread. In August 2024, she was convicted of 7 of 10 charges of engaging in a security breach to advance a false conspiracy theory of election fraud. She was sentenced to 9 years in prison, but she had merely preserved election records, which it was her sworn duty to do so. There was another group which investigated the stolen 2020 election from the very beginning. These men were intel professionals. One guy was even inside Trump's National Security Council. This group was known as Foot Patrol. Within days after the 2020 election, Foot Patrol was providing accurate information about the voting machines to public figures. That's because they had recruited former engineers from Smartmatic to map the entire system. Foot Patrol created a technical presentation, the briefing, to explain how the 2020 election was stolen in great detail. They provided the briefings to public figures in 2020 and 2021. They explained 14 different ways to steal an election with these machines. Foot Patrol gave briefings to senators, including Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley. They did nothing. They briefed the House Freedom Caucus. They did nothing too. According to Emerald sources, the staff of the House Freedom Caucus were good, but members were too scared to do anything. The chief of staff or one of the members told them, "We don't want to touch this." In fact, the only senator stood up for the truth, but that comes later. Foot Patrol gave the briefings to one FBI agent in Washington, D.C. When it was over, the FBI agent told them to flee the city immediately. Why? Because they would be killed by the FBI if anybody found out what they knew. Foot Patrol gave the briefings to lawyers working for Trump's son-in-law a few days after the election. Foot Patrol was basically attacked with unfriendly questions after the briefings. They did nothing too. DEA officials tried to stop Foot Patrol from giving the briefing because they considered some of the info belonged to them. Trump's own DEA officials didn't understand that the drug dealers that they were watching were also in America's voting machines. Foot Patrol also collected all the internet website information for Smartmatic and Dominion in the database to preserve records before it was all wiped by the bad guys. That's when they found the ultimate source, the anonymous Japanese guy. It turns out one guy tracked all internet traffic flowing between Dominion, Serbia, Hong Kong on election day in 2020. That one Japanese guy posted that info on his little anonymous account. Foot Patrol contacted him to get all the IP addresses that Dominion used. What did the Japanese guy want for a file of all the IP addresses that Dominion used inside the USA at election day in 2020? He wanted a donation of $20. To this day, nobody knows this guy's name. Here's the most important part. The IPs obtained from the Japanese guy on Twitter and X were crucial in stopping the steal in the 2024 election. So that guy helped save America. He might not even know it to this day. The IP info led to an astonishing discovery that the traders at CISA deny to this day, that the primary data center for the 2020 election was hosted in a foreign country on a Yahweh server. That's right. America's election system is in the hands of its enemies. CISA is supposed to be the place inside the DHS that protects America's vital infrastructure. But CISA is actually the nerve center where elections are stolen. In fact, CISA actually partners with Smartmatic to practice beforehand. Foot Patrol was in negotiations with Fox News to provide them with evidence and witnesses to fight the Dominion lawsuit. The meeting was called off in April of 2023. A former Trump cabinet secretary was advising the Murdochs. That person told Fox News to settle the case. Fox News immediately flipped its legal strategy. It settled with Dominion for $787.5 million. Then it fired Tucker Carlson 1 week later. Dominion's annual revenues were about $40 million. So the award was an absurd shakedown not supported by case law. A key detail, the parent company of Fox News had apparently obtained $1.25 billion loan package 1 year earlier for no particular reason. How did Fox executives know they would need so much money ahead of time? I wonder. Who was the former Trump official who told Fox News to settle with Dominion? Emerald Robinson sources, it was the same person who Tucker Carlson stopped from getting a position in the second Trump administration, Mike Pompeo. Oddly, Team Trump kept inviting this former Trump official to speak at public rallies as of late November 4th, 2024. President Trump finally revoked security protections for this person on January 23rd, 2025, 3 days after taking office. Why did it take so long for President Trump to understand the dangers of the voting machines? Because influential figures in the GOP wanted Trump to misunderstand the danger. GOP donors, GOP lawyers, and GOP politicians. Some are just finding out that President Trump now gets it. Our voting machines are controlled by narco-terrorists who rule Venezuela. Per the Wall Street Journal, oil magnate Harry Sargent III is the GOP donor well known for his back-channel efforts to temper hostilities between the U.S. and Venezuela. On Friday, the Trump administration ordered his oil trading company to leave the South American country. Trump revoked his permit. 2 weeks before doing this, Trump designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization. Why? Because the group is conducting irregular warfare inside the United States of America. Trump invoked the Aliens Enemies Act in this order. Why? Because we are at war with Venezuela and Tren de Aragua and the army of the cartel. Maduro leads the regime-sponsored enterprise, Cartel de las Sols. The cartel and the government are the same people. I think that's the end of the thread, but I'm not sure. Let me see. So, a small little Japanese guy on Twitter saved the 2024 election. And so what I know is that there's a team, which we call OSINT, Open Source Intelligence. There was a team, led by a very close friend and confidant to Donald Trump, who's a billionaire, who used that information to block them from stealing the 2024 election. Remember in Michigan how the Secretary of State Michigan wanted to install a patch because certain things weren't working? This is what was going on, people. They were going to steal the 2024 election and failed. Just like they're going to steal the 2016 election and failed. But when we go into Venezuela, remember this big part. Venezuela was the drop spot for the millions upon millions of illegal immigrants that flooded from Africa and the Middle East and China into the United States. Remember, they took ships over to Venezuela, they dropped their passports, and then they would go over the Bridge of America to the Darien Gap. They would meet with UN and NGOs, taxpayer funded, U.S. taxpayer funded, and then be led by cartels up to the U.S. border and then distributed throughout the United States of America. Who was the country paying for those people to get from the Middle East, Africa, and China into Venezuela? China. It's one thing that Emerald doesn't say there, but it's the truth. China. What were the servers that were operating? Yahweh servers. Remember what Donald Trump did in 2018? He kicked the company Yahweh out of our country. Now they're just going to try to think of another way to do it. But that's when you stop them. So now when you look back at this, 2020, you're starting to see that the Senate, White House General Counsel, FBI, CIA, and we're not talking about a few people. We're talking about lots of people. Congressional and Senate staffers, almost all of Congress, a lot of the Senate, except for 10 people, were all in on this. They were briefed. They knew that this was going on, and they allowed it to happen. That's fucking treason. And I don't give a fuck who those people are over in Washington, D.C. If you were briefed on this shit and you didn't do anything with it, you're going to fucking jail for a long time. I don't give a fuck if you have an R or a D next to your name. What are we finding out here? It's just been revealed that John Bolton, while he was President Trump's national security advisor, was handed a classified memo explaining how John Brennan fabricated the Trump-Putin collusion intelligence. But Bolton and the National Security Council, all the other staffers, did not inform Donald Trump of this. They knowingly withheld critical intelligence from Donald Trump. When they say deep state, you have to see how integrated this shit really is. The CIA has been working right now to declassify, with the DOJ, to declassify for release likely this week, explosive new information from a long-class appendix of the Durden report showing FBI accelerated the plan by Hillary Clinton to frame Trump as a Russian traitor. Underlining intel puts Brennan, Comey, Hillary in perjury jeopardy and treason jeopardy. Now, Donald Trump just came out and said this last weekend that Barack Obama has immunity regarding the Russia hoax. Damn. These fuckers. Now, what President Trump is referring to is that Barack Obama was acting in his official capacity of president to make these determinations, of which, if you go back to the Trump immunity case, where SCOTUS ruled that Trump has immunity on certain things that he makes in decision as president, but not in the sense of personal decisions. This means that Barack Obama would have immunity going forth with all of this. But see, there's a catch to this. Obama could get impeached over Russiagate, stripping his immunity under the SCOTUS ruling. How does that happen? Well, a president can be impeached at any time. They can impeach Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon if they wanted to right now. What do we have coming up? Oh, we have the midterm elections. And what are we about to see? A red wave? Which means that we'd have a supermajority. Supermajority red wave would give us the ability to impeach Barack Obama from his last term of presidency and then hold him legally accountable for this. We're watching the end of the Democrat Party. It's over. We've talked about that in the context of fundraising. It's not even happening with the Democrats at this point. Trump's raised over $1.5 billion. The Democrats aren't raising shit. Many of them are retiring because they know that they're not going to win because the voting machines are no longer rigged in their favor. Now, John Brennan offshored the anti-Trump operations to England, then brought them back into the USA. Chris Steele, Steph Helper, and others were working with British MI6 as well as the FBI and the CIA. Now, we saw this in a February 2024 document that was released that was undersigned by Barack Obama authorizing MI6 investigation into Donald Trump. Now you have a foreign intelligence agency directly involved in this. Let's listen to what Devin Nunes has to say. 1 of 10.
In the Durham report. I've never seen that. So that will be new. That'll be new information. I think once you compile that, then the strike force will have to work with real investigators, unlike the investigators, these fake investigations that have gone on. So I'm confident that between the Trump Justice Department, working with Kash Patel and Bongino over at the FBI, they'll have a real team of people that will actually look at this in its entirety, get to the bottom of it, and then at that point, there's no question, John Ratcliffe, as you know, made criminal referrals. Don't forget, I made a dozen criminal referrals as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. So, you know, those are all sitting over there somewhere. So hopefully the conspirators will be held accountable.
And there's Devin Nunes, who knew all of this back then. Now, I just saw a good question. What is the point to impeach Obama after his term? Well, that removes his executive immunity. If he's impeached, then he no longer would have immunity under the law for those crimes. So if you go back now a little bit, Senate Intel ranking member Mark Warner turned away an Intel analyst who worked at the ICA and approached his office numerous times to blow the whistle on the CIA director Brennan, juicing bad intel on Russia and Trump, but Warner refused to even give him email addresses to send the evidence to. Last week, we saw Mark Warner coming out there trying to contradict DNI Tulsi Gabbard, saying that the ICA report, that the Senate Intel report confirmed Russia interfered with our election. So Tulsi, you don't know what you're talking about. I came out and said, Mark Warner, you just publicly, knowingly stated that you helped in the collusion of the coup against Donald Trump. And now we're finding out that evidence is actually linking him directly to that, to where whistleblowers came to him directly and he wouldn't even give them the time of day. Now, did you hear this one? President Trump considered visiting CIA headquarters before the 2020 election to retrieve the explosive report locked in a gun safe inside the vault that exposed Brennan's ICA on Russia as a fraud. I wonder what happened and why Trump didn't. I wonder if Mike Pompeo had something to do with that. Dan Bongino, this last weekend, Deputy Director of the FBI. During my tenure here as Deputy Director of the FBI, I have repeatedly relayed to you that things are happening that might not be immediately visible, but they are happening. The director and I are committed to stamping out public corruption and the political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It is a priority for us. But what I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigation into these aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. We are going to conduct these righteous and proper investigations by the book and in accordance with the law. We are going to get to the answers we all deserve. As with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will land, but I can promise you an honest and dignified effort at truth. Not my truth or your truth, but the truth. God bless America and all those who defend her, respectively. Dan. That is about the scariest and best damn thing that I've ever heard. We got people in the DOJ, in the White House, in the military, in the CIA that are looking after America's best interest right now. And I can tell you this with absolute fucking assurity that there's threats every day that these people deal with, and they are trying to keep America safe, people. Now, Trump sending signals, Scavino sending signals from the boards. Scavino puts out here on July 24th at 9:14 p.m., puts the eyes out there. July 24th, Delta, eyes on, talking about Epstein. Then the 2114 timestamp. Logical thinking, month, September. Public learned, GJ impelled, McCabe, COVID evidence, follow the connections. We have it all. Eyes on, we have it all. Talking about Epstein. I know they do. They are just playing the charade show and utilizing the leverage to their advantage. Trump just negotiated one hell of a deal in Europe, didn't he? I wonder what leverage he had on that. Jeffrey Epstein may have been working with Russia or Chinese intelligence. Who is the guy for the last few years that has told you over and over and over again, every other buddy, Epstein was working for Mossad. Epstein was working for Mossad. I'm sitting here telling you, Epstein wasn't just working for the Mossad. Epstein was working for the CIA, the Mossad. He was working for MI6. He was working for the GRU, and he was working for the MSS, Chinese intelligence. Now it's being confirmed by Western intelligence sources that Epstein worked for the Chinese intelligence, MSS, and the GRU. Told you. Now, why does that matter? Because it means that the data inside the Epstein files is a lot more than talking about child pedophilia and third parties who were raping kids. And I know that needs to be prosecuted, and it absolutely does. But you have to add in that we're talking about foreign intelligence operations and people compromised actively right now, compromised in the United States government, congressmen, senators, so forth. Now, Bogus actually asked a good question here. He said, and this goes back to Obama and presidential immunity. He says, Josh, doesn't a military tribunal circumvent presidential immunity? Yes, it does. But you have to get there. So right now what we have, important to know here, right now what we have is we have Epstein, FISA-gate, 2020 election fraud, COVID. Once the investigations begin, this will all start to interlace together. You got to remember, with President Barack Obama's official orders as president, there was no direct knowing collaboration with foreign adversaries to overthrow President Trump. He signed and helped foreign intelligence agencies use it, but he could just argue that that was in his official capacity. But once you get to the 2020 election, you're talking about Venezuela and China. Now, that's a foreign adversary. That deals in the context of military, because now that's an act of war, and these people colluded with foreign adversaries in an act of war against the United States of America. In other words, it was a belligerent occupation, exactly as we talked about. Now, going back in, this last weekend, we heard Ghislaine Maxwell gave details on 100 different people linked to Jeffrey Epstein during her interview with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. For her attorney, Ghislaine was asked about every possible thing you could imagine, everything. And according to sources, she is going to make a plea deal with the DOJ and testify. So I want you to kind of see the context here. The Biden DOJ comes in and destroys all third-party evidence inside the Epstein files. We know Trump has a copy of it, most likely from Bannon. Epstein probably still alive. That's down the road. That's like the Trump card being pulled out. But in the meantime, they interject fake information, like they did at Mar-a-Lago and stuff like that, into the Epstein files to try to run this Trump was compromised by Epstein thing. But now what happens? They go to Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell comes out, and she's going to testify in Congress on August 11th. What's she going to say? I guarantee you she'll say that Trump had nothing to do with Epstein's Island or anything that happened there. But I think it's important to note that it's going to be Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony versus what the DOJ has that is destroyed evidence and potentially compromising material that was put in there by the DOJ. But then at the last minute, Jeffrey Epstein's files are going to drop from Bannon, Trump's team. Maybe Epstein even comes in and blows it all out of proportion, especially when skepticism is at its highest. All right, I'm only halfway done. We got a lot to go through. I have outlined something known as the firestorm event for a very long time. I said that when this system comes to a point of vulnerability, when the deep state and globalist system is about to crash and collapse, and the new system is getting birthed and getting going, and investigations begin, and we're about to see prosecutions, that's when you will see the firestorm. Social, cultural destabilization, political and institutional infiltration. You'll see supply chain and infrastructure begin to collapse, and then you'll see the Black Swan event, global economic collapse, World War III. But they've already tried to start World War III once. Donald Trump knitted that in the butt real fast. But let me ask you this. Are we beginning to see this right now? Now, Health Ranger doesn't always get it right, but he reported on this, and I love what he said, and I agree with what he said here, because this is truthful. According to numerous cybersecurity websites now reporting this, a threat actor has hacked and stolen the source code for the CMS combat management system that runs ballistic missile submarines and frigates associated with Naval Group, France's largest military manufacturer. The source code, combined with other classified documents, are claimed to have been stolen. Could allow malicious actors potentially seize combat control of France's 4 ballistic-capable submarines, which carry a combined 64 M51 ballistic missiles, SLMBMs, which have a range up to 11,000 kilometers, meaning they could reach New York City and Washington, D.C. within minutes. Each of these 64 missiles carries 6 to 10 independently targeted TN-75 thermonuclear warheads. each with a reported yield of 110 kilotons, or about 7 times more powerful than that of an atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. This means hackers could right now control 600 plus nuclear warheads with flight time to any target within a range measured in tens of minutes. Global thermonuclear war, in other words, could be initiated by an unknown cyber group at any moment. And if France is forced to take its submarines offline to address a cyber attack, such an action would inflict a catastrophic gap in Europe's nuclear deterrence posture against Russia. This would allow Russia to carry out a first strike nuclear attack on Western Europe with the expectation of a sharply reduced retaliatory response. Now I'm going to play a video for you. See if you guys know anything about this.
Gates, would you like to condemn Microsoft's Azure program for leaking sensitive classified information to the CCP? Are you pro-CCP, Mr. Gates? I understand your foundation owns a lot of Microsoft shares now, and your Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has heavily financed and is financially connected to the CCP. So is that why you're not answering the questions about government's Microsoft's Azure program, Mr. Gates?
What is he talking about? What is he talking about there? On and around July 7th, 2025, an exploit was found within the Microsoft cloud server Azure, as well as Microsoft servers across the country, affecting electric power grid infrastructure, transportation, communications, but not only in the United States, but all throughout the world. Within this, various parts of U.S. government agencies were also affected, as per the public declared articles. This is a hard one for me to discuss. And there's probably some people out there that I know who are listening right now are like, don't do it. And I'm not going to do it. But I want you to understand something. That the deep state threat is much more real than we could ever imagine. I want you to understand, if you go to that public article that talks about the compromising of U.S. systems by the CCP, that is a very, very drawn down report of what is happening. Now go to what you saw in France with these ballistic missile codes and the combat management system hacked. Now think about that here. Just take that into context for me and understand that that is the firestorm if they wanted to. They could do it with the technology that they have and the capabilities they have. So keep that in mind, because we're not out of the woods yet with everything that's happening. Now, we've seen mass stabbings happening across the country. Just today, we had a Middle Eastern man wearing a bulletproof vest just opened fire on police officers in New York City. The man from Nevada, he's from Nevada. And what about him? Well, he had a concealed carry permit. That doesn't say too much. I don't know if he was an American citizen. I haven't checked the social media channels to find much more on him. They say it was Middle Eastern. I don't know. He kind of looks not Middle Eastern, but maybe he is dark-skinned. But he shot at cops, injuring one, and I think he's killed 5 people. He eventually shot himself, which I believe he was still alive on his way to the hospital. In other words, to me, it sounds like the deep state and the globalists, the cabal, are activating sleeper cells around the world. And it's beginning. And it's going to continue to ramp up the more into the storm that we go. Keep that in mind with everything that we've talked about in the context of how activating Tren de Agua, gangs, cartels, Chinese sleeper cells, Hezbollah Unit 910, or other various terrorist sleeper cells in the United States could actually happen and is a very big possibility. Off of the scary note. Yeah, what a way to end a Monday with Black Pill Project. No, actually, we're not ending it right there. Now we're going to talk about some good news that's happening. Why the globalists are scared, why the deep state is getting dismantled, and what's actually happening. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick just announced that President Trump's EU deal will bring in $90 billion in revenue for the United States. I want you to understand that. Let's listen to Howard real quick.
Well, remember, the European Union is $20 trillion economy, 450 million people. I mean, it is head and shoulders bigger than all the other Western civilizations. So the fact is the European Union is the monster deal. President Trump did that deal yesterday. We were all together in Scotland. We got the deal done. So here how it goes. The European Union is going to pay 15%, and they sell us $600 billion worth of goods. That's $90 billion for America, and they agreed for the first time ever to cut all their tariffs, cut their barriers, and let American businesses and farmers and ranchers and fishermen finally sell into the European Union. Massive market. This is huge for America. Well, remember, it
is huge. Now, I know people are like, yeah, but tariffs, those are taxes put on the people who buy the products. Yeah, but you know what? It's nothing more than a consumption tax. And if that consumption tax funds the government, and they get rid of income taxes and property taxes and other types of taxes, it becomes an incredibly good thing, doesn't it? Because we know that that's what's actually happening. Now, many Europeans aren't happy with that deal. It screws Europe pretty bad. The question is, what leverage did Donald Trump use in Europe to negotiate that deal? Remember, he did the negotiations at his residence in Scotland. Home turf. What intelligence maybe did he use and say, hey, look, you know, we could always just release the Epstein files, or you can do this deal. Do you see how the compromise can be utilized as leverage? Because I'm pretty sure that King Charles and Prince Andrew don't want all of that video evidence released to the world. And that would be a national scandal for the UK. Because Trump just got one hell of a deal that absolutely decimates the EU. EU will agree to buy $750 billion worth of U.S. energy. They will agree to invest $600 billion more than previously invested in the United States. So he just got $650 billion from Japan. He got $650 billion from the EU. Negotiated $90 billion in trade surplus with the UK. It's huge. That's $1.7 trillion, by the way, when you're looking at it. Harvard is ready to dish out over $500 million to settle their dispute with President Trump, per the New York Times. This would be over double what Columbia University paid when they caved. Another institution caving to the federal government, caving to Donald Trump. Democrats at the Kennedy Center has tens of millions of dollars in fake revenue. The great new CFO went through the 24 and 25 budgets of the Kennedy Center and found $26 million in phantom revenue, fake revenue. It's criminal. We're going to refer this into the U.S. Attorney's Office here. We're lucky enough to have an Attorney General who's on board. Listen to this. Listen to Rich Grinnell talk about this. Because if you go back a few months, I told you, I said, how does Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats get paid through the Kennedy Center? I said, you'll find out.
Our great new CFO went through the 24 and 25 budgets of the Kennedy Center and found $26 million in phantom revenue, fake revenue. It's criminal. We're going to refer this to the U.S. Attorney's Office here. We're lucky enough to have the Attorney General on the board of the Kennedy Center who heard all the details today. She heard the details. And this is unacceptable in America, to have a fake revenue of $26 million fraud on previous donors. It's on our great new.
Now, how did congressmen and senators make money off of that? If I reported to the IRS that I donated $2 million to the Kennedy Center annotates its book saying that it has $2 million comes in, that's a write-off. $26 million of fake revenue, tax benefits that were put out to these people. I wonder who's on that list. That's the list I want to see released today, is who were those donors of the fake money, because they got those records and they're sending the criminal referrals to the DOJ. I guarantee you Nancy Pelosi's going to be in there. Other congressmen and senators. Talking about the new financial system, the Trump administration has taken direct stakes in companies on a scale rarely seen in U.S. history outside of wartime and economic crisis. Uncle Sam is becoming an active investor at a scale not seen before since World War II. Remember when I talked about the Sovereign Wealth Fund and I said that Trump and Trump's team will be investing in American businesses in AI and quantum computing and cryptocurrency, and that the dividends of that will be funded into the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which eventually will pay out the national debt, it'll fund government, it'll pay for future government programs, it'll pay for Social Security, then it'll also pay out dividends to the American citizens. That's what's happening, people. Trump has said that deals with China are coming soon. He says, my Secretary of Treasury is meeting with Chinese trade officials right now. We have a good relationship with China, but they are tough. We just concluded our deal with Japan, and it was a very good one. He says, we're making great deals that are good for us. We've made a lot of deals in the past couple of months. Now, last week, Xi Jinping called Donald Trump and said, Trump, come to China. Let's meet in the Forbidden City. That has to do with something else that's going on, but also the reason we're not renegotiating trade deals with China is because there's something else that's going on. Go back and think about that Microsoft hack that I was just talking about. Then think about who is behind that Microsoft hack. Now, I'm about to show you an image, and I want you to see where we are at and where we are going. This is known as the Bitcoin adoption curve. Right here at the bottom is early adopters. This is less than 3% of the population, of which 90% of that 3% hold less than $1,000 of Bitcoin. We are right here, as in the early majority. You still have time to get in before the early majority, people. If you have not, go and check it out. thecryptofuture.com. I know some people are having trouble when they do sign up with that. If you're in a foreign country, just email me and I can help you out with that. thecryptofuture.com. Use that discount code 2025 discount for that 50% off. And we'll get you taken care of. I'm booking up really, really fast right now. So please get in there as soon as possible and book those appointments if you want to get those one-on-ones to learn more about crypto and how you can get involved in it. So this is Howard Lutnick talking about tariff revenue, because tariff revenue, as well as what we're about to see through the Sovereign Wealth Fund and dividends paid into it, is going to pay and fund for the government. It's going to give dividends to the American people. Listen to Howard Lutnick.
So the tariff revenues are amazing, right? $700 billion a year. That's just net new money the government never had before. So you take that every year for 10 years, that's $7 trillion. And then what they're not counting is the way the president is smashing open these markets. You got every market, right? Japan, Indonesia, Vietnam, you name the deal he does, and he opens that market. That's going to have export growth, right? Never before has our ag and our industrials actually had access to these markets. You know, we're meeting later today with the European Union. You know, the president's goal, get those markets open for Americans to export to them. And that growth is going to pay for everything. It makes Americans richer. And, of course, our tax revenues go up the right way by Americans making more money by winning in business.
And he's absolutely right. As America starts exporting more out to the world, our GDP increases hand and foot. As that begins to happen, more jobs come into the United States of America. More jobs equals more revenue for these companies. More revenue for those companies equals higher paying jobs for people, which therefore increases the overall wealth of our nation. And that's what Donald Trump is setting up for this new economic system. I'll touch on those parts tomorrow. What is the big sector that's happening right now? I called it the Next Manhattan Project weeks ago when I reported on it in one of my Substack blogs. Now it's being talked about openly. The Next Manhattan Projects, the Department of Energy picks 4 federal sites for AI data centers. The Department of Energy just picked 4 nuclear-adjacent federal sites to become launch pads for America's AI dominance. Idaho, Oak Ridge, Putaukah, Putaukah's in Idaho, and Savannah River. The goal is to build massive AI data centers plus energy infrastructure in one go. Think servers powered by small reactors. Trump's pushing it hard as national security flex, an energy revolution, and a chance plus obligation to beat China in the AI arms race. The Next Manhattan Project, said Energy Secretary Chris Wright. Bottom line, nuclear-powered AI in government land built by the private sector under federal executive orders. I have a blog on my Substack that outlines this from the last big, beautiful bill of the new strategic economic zones that were created, 12 of them, where these companies have basically free reign to build entire cities in these areas, to build new Manhattan projects like this for AI, blockchain, and quantum computing. Now, understand that since that point, Donald Trump has raised over $15 trillion to flow into the United States, to flow into these sectors. That's a massive market gap. Now, when you start to think about the potential of investing right now in just these 3 sectors, you can understand that it's going to have a major significance. I'm not going to talk about the weather tonight because there's something definitely going on with the weather. We're about to have 100-mile-per-hour winds here in Minnesota tomorrow night. If certain things hit certain things, it's going to be pretty crazy. But the one thing I did want to talk about, let's listen to Tim Burchett real quick, because there's something going on here. And I've talked about 2027 in this time frame, but this is even more interesting with things that happened this weekend.
He was asked 2 different times during the campaign about it, and he said, sure, we're going to release them. He also said he's going to release the UFO files and the Kennedy files, and we're still working on all that because it is a dadgum process.
So Tim Burchett talking about the UFO files. Donald Trump is going to release the UFO files, and he's working on it right now. Now, over this weekend, there was an article that came out talking about this comet 3I/Atlas. Now, the mysterious intergalactic object could potentially be a hostile alien ship that's slated to attack our planet in November, according to a new study by scientists. And this is Harvard's Avi Loeb. Now, obviously, multiple scientific sources have said that this is nothing more than a comet, a very large one, from outside of our solar system. But we're starting to hear in the social circuits from various Harvard professors talking about its weird nature of how it's going to come into the solar system and loop in around, utilizing the golden mean, and actually come very close to Earth during this time frame. Now, Avi Loeb believes that it's intelligently controlled and believes this could be a hostile alien probe checking us out. Maybe a second one sent by the same people that had the last one. Now, this is really interesting because there's this Jeremy Corbell video. You don't know who Jeremy Corbell is. He's the host of the Weaponized podcast. He's been very closely associated with a lot of the whistleblowers and a lot of people on both sides of the house, whether legitimate, illegitimate, good or bad, whatever your thoughts are. But what he says right here, I think, is very, very true to understand and remember. Because now we're hearing it today.
But the lie is coming. All indications, like all of them, is that that lie is going to be that there is a craft slowly making its way to us here on Earth. And that is the lie they're going to want you to believe. It's nuanced, how they explain that, the nature of that threat. But that 100% is the lie you are going to be told. You even got a date. People have been whispering a date for a long time now. I know where that lie comes from. I know specifically What document from the 70s initiated the idea of that lie? A classified document. That is the lie you will be told. You're going to be told that there is a craft on its way to Earth. That's the lie.
Project Bluebeam, anybody? All right, we are way over time, but it was definitely fun, wasn't it? I'm happy to be back. Hope you guys are happy to have me back. So we're going to talk more this week on various other topics. We're going to get deep into it all. What I want you to do is hit that thumbs up, Rumble, Facebook, and X. Help support by hitting that like or thumbs up button. It definitely does help, and it's much appreciated. And after you're done with that, don't forget to go over there and subscribe to redpillproject.substack.com. A lot of the content we had last week is coming out this week. So sorry. Camping trip. That just happens. But it's coming. So we got a few different blogs that need to get published. And guys, we're going to see you tomorrow. So much love, respect. God bless. Take care. Have a great night. I'll see you guys again next time.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!